All right, folks, back for some more sociology. And today we're going to be talking about race. And let's jump into it. We're in the chapter on race and ethnicity. And much like we did with sex and gender, we're going to talk about the difference between race and ethnicity. So, starting out, race is a socially constructed category of people who share biologically transmitted traits that members of a society consider important. That's the kind of the definition in sociology. Now, what I'll point out about this, what's different about this, it's interesting. What's different about this compared to sex is that here it says a socially constructed category. And so sex doesn't say socially constructed, but we're moving that way. As a social science, we're moving in that direction. And so this is the first you've seen socially constructed category. And so in this video, we're going to look at that and give you some examples of it. And the next video, we'll look at social standing. Um, so ethnicity then is going to be simply shared cultural heritage. And so I put some, let me move that over just a little bit. It's not all visible. There you go. So I put some ideas about what we mean by cultural heritage. Common language, these are all parts of culture. Language, music, traditions, customs, religion, food, entertainment, geography, fashion. That's a big one. So I didn't include everything in here, but just to give you an idea, shared cultural heritage. People that have that in common. Now, much like we've looked at with sex and gender, historically we've said, well, if you're of this race, then this ethnicity. So this race, therefore you must be this. If you're this race, you must like this sport. If you're of this race, you must like this music, or etc. Historically, that's how we've seen this. Now, again, the science on race is evolving, and it's evolved more so than it has on sex. We know now that the only differences between people of skin color is minute. We're all humans. All people are humans. Used to not be seen that way. Okay? So there's a lot of power baked into this idea of the social construction of race. All right. Now I'm gonna introduce you to some of that um, by looking in the United States in the different categories. Again, the reality is that these are related. Okay, and in fact, they're not really biological. So now that doesn't mean that race doesn't exist. There's a very rich history of race in the United States and around the world. So we got to be careful. Race is a social construct that has had tremendous cultural significance over the history of the United States and other countries again, right? But in terms of it being biological, that doesn't hold a lot of water unless color of skin is enough. Um, I'll give you a quick personal story here. I'll even go into just the direct shot of me. Personal story. So my wife is Hispanic. Her father is from South America. My wife's mother is from Kentucky, Owensboro, Davis County. So we have 4 children. So our children are Hispanic, or are they? And what I mean by that, my wife is always upset. You might even see pictures. There's some pictures behind me. I don't know if you can see my kids back there, though. Maybe in that one or that one. But my wife has always been upset because our kids don't look Hispanic, frankly. I've got one that has black hair and blue eyes, and one. Now, this is some stereotypes going on for sure. I have another child that has red hair and light complected and greenish eyes, and a son, brownish hair, blue eyes, light complected, and another daughter, red hair, um, hazel eyes, and light skin. So are they Hispanic? So the question is, what makes somebody white, black, Hispanic, Asian? How do you know? Is there a test for that? No, there's not. So when a kid is born, a child is born, how is the race determined? Well, usually by the mother. Well, how does the mom know what race she is? And so, some of you say, well, I'm clearly white or I'm clearly black and whatever else. Okay. But let me give you an example where it can get a little bit convoluted with this notion of mixing of races. And I'm using that in quotes because we don't really think about it that way any longer. Just two humans. We're all one race. Let me give you an example. So, what amount of ancestry, if you will, do you have to have before you consider yourself that race? So, my oldest daughter is speaks Spanish. I speak Spanish. I'm white, very white. I'm from Western Europe, Germany. I'm not. My ancestors are. I'm from good old Owensboro, Davis County. But I speak better Spanish than my wife. And contrary to what my wife says, I have much better rhythm. I mean, you can see that I've got music instruments behind me. I don't know if you see any of that or not. You may see one right. Yeah, there it is right there. Oh, I love this. But anyway, so what is it that makes up race? Well, going back to thinking of race and ethnicity, uh, this doesn't always equal. Okay, it's just not always clear cut. So let's go through this a little bit more. So I'm going to show you the most recent data here on race and ethnicity. And let me take myself off. I'm going to have to do this a couple times in this PowerPoint. I'll take myself off so you can see the slide clearly. But this is from the Census Bureau. And let's look at this. White alone, okay? In Davis County, it's 90%. Okay? City of Owensboro, it's 84. Kentucky's 87, and then look at this. Now, Hispanic or Latino, you could be white and be Hispanic. Hispanic is about culture, not about race. Hispanic is about ethnicity, not race. You could be white alone and not Hispanic, which that's what I am. White alone, not Hispanic, although I speak Spanish, but that's not enough, I guess, for me to be Hispanic. Of course, it's not, because there's other factors that usually are at play when people consider themselves one race or another. So white people, I should have been clear about this at the outset. This is not, white alone. Let me get the pen up. This is not white alone up here. It says that, but it's not. Okay, it's a little confusing. White alone, not Hispanic. Okay, so this is actually white people when we think in a traditional sense of white people. I know you're dying to see me, so let me. Yeah, I'm back. No, I'm not. I still can't see the slide. Oh well. I'll go back to. Sorry. I'll go back to this. So when you look at just white people, it's a little bit lower than it is up here. And of course, this number includes this number, right? This number includes this number. These numbers. No, wait. So the numbers are a little bit off because of definitions. Because you could be black and you could be Hispanic. Oh, it gets confusing, folks. Main thing I want to show you is this. Look at this. White people in the United States are much less than it is in the state of Kentucky. There are a lot more Hispanic people at the national level than there are in Kentucky and Owensboro. Owensboro is very white, right? See this compared to this number. There's a major demographic shift going on in the United States that's we're becoming more racial, ethnically diverse. Okay, so these numbers might be surprising to you, to some extent at least. Now then, I'm going to bring myself back for a moment, although let me see what the next slide is. Yeah, I'll just leave myself off. So, okay, where do we get race from? Right? Where do we get the categories of race from? Well, we get them from the Census Survey, the Census Bureau. And what I'm going to show you are the actual categories of persons classified by the census over its history from 1790, the first census, up until now. And then we do it every 10 years. But this is how we know the numbers that I just showed you. That's where they come from. This is the Census Bureau, Census Survey. Okay? Where does that come from? Well, here are the definitions. So let's look at this. Take a step back and thinking about race. In 1790, I want to point something out here. There are actually 3 indicators in each category. Free, which implies not being a slave. There's an economic category, if you will. White, there's the race, and then gender. Right? So you're either free white male, free white female, all other free person, or a slave. And why does that matter? Well, you know enough about the history of the United States as to why it would matter what your category is, how you're classified. We're going to look at definitions of some of these in just a minute, which you might find very interesting. I certainly do. Some of you have never seen this. Let me put myself on the screen here. I want to tell you something. So, some of you have never seen this. Okay. To me, this information about race and ethnicity in the United States boggles me the most in that we don't learn this unless you take sociology class. You know, in some schools around the nation, you're not even allowed to talk about race and ethnicity anymore. As if there's a whitewashing of racial history in this country. These are the categories of race as we know them to be over the course of our history in the United States. So every 10 years, the census is done, and what I'm going to do is walk you through and show you how these have changed over time. Notice white hasn't changed here, and as a matter of fact, as we go through this, white stays the same the entire time. Okay? So, yay, I'm back, I think. Maybe just a second, let me fix it. There we go. Yay, I'm back. Okay, so you had a chance to look at these. These changed. So one question is, let me draw this to your attention. So you see mulatto right here. Now that term is not used anymore. It basically means mixed. Hispanic, black, it's mixed. Mulattoes are around in 1890. They're not here in 1900, but they can make a comeback in 1910. If race is so exact, how is it that it ever goes missing in a census? So we talk about these being socially constructed. That's what this means. These aren't scientific explanations. So if they were scientific and they were accurate, then these people wouldn't disappear and then all of a sudden they reappear. The names wouldn't change either. Notice how the names keep changing except for white. White, 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 white. See it over there? Where is it? Over there? Way over there. White, 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 white. Of course, that's European, French, German, English, Austrian, in some cases, Spain. And you're like, but Mr. Gasser, they speak Spanish. Well, that's it. The definitions can vary. Moving forward, now it starts to get a little bit more complicated. The more we understand about people, of course, some terms here you don't even see around anymore and are negative connotation. These here, actually, I didn't point it out too much. These are very, very racist now. It means a quarter black, an eighth black, which we're going to get to talking about what that means in a minute. All right. So I'm going to get off the screen here again so you can see these categories. So you see how this has really changed a lot as the terms, the cultural understanding of people, the names change. Here's 2010. I think I have the most recent. Yeah, this is from the 2020 census. Okay. So how do we know what people are? And we talked about this just a moment ago. This is the single category, the single, area where you indicate what race you are. This is from the Census Bureau. This Census survey from 2020. Now then, there's something I haven't told you is that prior to 1970, people were trained in doing census surveys. So the Census Bureau would hire people and they would train them and send them out all across the United States, and they would go to people's homes, knock on their door, and sit down with them and interview them and document who they were and all this information. If you've ever done any genealogy work, if you go to the library in the Kentucky room, you might have looked at microfiche. It's really interesting where you can see how your ancestors, if you could trace them back, some people can't trace them back, but you can see how they were documented. That's how it was kept. Now, the 2020 census, you might find it interesting. It was the first time that you could complete the census survey online or with a cell phone. I worked a lot with the Census Bureau locally in 2020. And I don't know if I've said this or not, but sociologists work with the Census Bureau. That's one thing we do, research and data demography. That's what we're talking about. Beginning in 1970, though, the census survey was mailed out to people and people completed it on their own. A big, big difference. So before, people were trained and they went to people's homes and interviewed them and documented some things. And since 1970, the survey has gone out to homes and people take that survey like I did when we received it in 2020. My wife and I, completed that survey. Self-response is what it is. So how do I know what race I am? Okay, so look at the difference in the definitions. This is where it gets eye-opening. So here you go. This is taken directly from the census survey from 1890. And I have highlighted some areas over here. Okay, I've highlighted that. This is the exact wording. On color, sex, and age, question number 4. These are the directions. Indicate basically whether they are white, black, mulatto, quadroon, octoroon, Chinese, Japanese, or Indian. That's what the language is. Then it says, be particularly careful to distinguish between blacks, mulattoes, quadroons, and octoroons. The word black should be used to describe those persons who have 3/4 or more black blood. Mulatto, those persons who have from 3/8 to 5/8 black blood. Quadroon, those persons who have 1/4 black blood, and octoroon, those persons who have 1/8 or any trace of black blood. Okay. I got to put my face on the screen for this, okay? So let me do this. Let me go back and now then, because you got to see my face on this. Yo, what are we doing? Right? But here's the question. How do you know in 1890, it's unfortunate I can't see you right now because when I ask if you've ever looked into your genealogy, most people haven't done it. It's hard to do. It's hard to find the records and all the information. Well, what about in 1890? How easy was it? Okay. Even more difficult. So, what is this getting at? This idea that people who have 3/4 or more black blood, 3/4, what does that mean? Is there any difference between black blood and white blood? Of course, we know that there is no difference. To know if you're 5/8 black blood, it means you would have to know something about your ancestry. This is fiction, right? And so this is how we determine people's race based on some falsehoods, really. And so we talk about it being a social construct, a political construct. It's important to know the social history around race as it relates to these definitions. And so, in some ways, these definitions are justifying how we see non white people in society during these times that can justify how we treat them in society. There's some of that going on there. Okay. So, moving on, let's look at a few other things here. This is where you're going to find this interesting. So, here we go. So, this was the guidance in 1890 that I just read you. And then look at this how the 1997 standards define race and ethnicity. Beginning in 1997, beginning in the year the 2000 census. The categories developed represent a socio-political construct designed to be used in the self-reported or observed collection of data on the race and ethnicity of major broad population groups in this country, and I've highlighted this, and are not biologically or genetically based. So, I got to make sure I get my pen here. This is different than this, right? These are two different things. So, moving on. Actually, I'm going to stop right there and I'm going to pick that up in the next video. Hope you found that interesting. A lot of people have not covered that before. So, thanks for hanging out.